Hello everyone, welcome to today's Knowledge webinar, which is actually a Q&A with Jonathan Pickup. Jonathan is trained as an architect and he has more than 30 years of experience. He has been writing and producing Vectorworks manuals and providing customer support for more than 20 years. His company, ArchonCAD, is the premier provider of third-party manuals and training resources for Vectorworks. He offers monthly webinars for Vectorworks and maintains the Visual Knowledgebase for Vectorworks. Jonathan, as I said, joins us from New Zealand. And let me show you a little bit about Noveg and tell you a little bit about Noveg. Noveg is changing the way designers purchase 3D software. We offer more choices, more freedom, best advice, and faster service. As you know, Vectorworks 2021 is coming, and we want to make sure you're aware that if you buy or upgrade to Vectorworks 2020 now, you will have automatically the 2021 version for free as soon as it's released, which is going to be very soon at this point. So get 2020 now and save 25%. And you also get 1 year of VSS for free. And check all this out at noveg.com. And now enough about me, like I always say. I'm going to share Jonathan's screen so you can take your questions and run for it. Take it away, Jonathan.
Cool, thanks very much. I don't know if anyone's been looking at the teaser Tuesdays that Vectorworks has been releasing. Some of those, the 3D modeling and the change in the interface, extremely cool, and I think really productive. And Barbara, we're going to plan to have a what's new in 2021, aren't we? A free webinar.
Absolutely.
And I'll show you how to take advantage of those things as well. So I'm going to start by looking at a roof. So the first question, let's look at my first question. The first question I had was, what's the best place to get started thinking about the marionette tool? So one of the issues I've got, Ashot, is that the marionette tool requires, I guess is too strong a word, but in order to use the marionette tool, you've got to understand the thing that you're trying to make. Now the marionette tool, and marionette's not alone in this, there's a couple of other things that do the same type of thing. It's a visual, it's called a visual scripting tool. And the idea is, can you see my screen, Ashot? You can see there's a little, I've got a little animated GIF that I've got running here that goes through the concept of marionette. That you need to create an input, and then you've got a thing called a node. The node tells the input to do something. That is, take an information, take a dimension, and you can see what we've got here is I've actually created a manual on how to use marionette, and these were just some images I took from it. So we've got an input, creates the node does something, we then do something to it, and we get a result. And the basic concept of marionette is that you've got node, and then you connect the nodes together with wires. That's these little curvy things here. I actually think if you want the best place to get started, I think this is probably a good place here. This is my knowledge base, my visual knowledge base. And I've got a feeling you remember, so have a look through here and have a look. We've got nodes and wires, an introduction to the concept of nodes and wires, what the difference between an input and an output is, how the origin of marionette works, and then I go through how to make simple objects to teach you how to use marionette to do basic things. And it comes a little bit back to the way you create a three-dimensional object in Vectorworks, or the way you create a complex object in Vectorworks. We don't start by creating a complex object. We start by creating a simple object and then adding another simple object to it and then another simple object. And so I've tried to create a manual that works through this. And on my old website, the learn.archoncad, there's actually a manual that goes through this. And what I'll do after this, I'll make sure I provide a link here so you can read through the manual itself. I didn't want to do marionette today, perhaps, but if we have time, I wouldn't mind doing a couple of simple things with it. But the real trick is that you have to learn to break this object up into chunks. So, for example, if we were going to build the bottom of this object here, we'd want to get a rectangle and we'd want to extrude it. If we want to get a rectangle, we need to know the height and the width of the rectangle. We need to know where the origin of the rectangle is. Those nodes will input information, feed it to this node here, the rectangle, and it'll feed the rectangle down that wire to this next node here. Then we need a dimension for the top and the bottom of our extrusion. So the top controls the height at the top, the bottom controls the start elevation. We add that to the rectangle and we get an extrusion at the output. So it's really a matter of understanding how these things go or how these things flow. And I don't know why, but they flow from left to right. You can't make them flow back the other way very easily. Could be something to do with the way we write from left to right, maybe. So too bad if you're not, if your language goes the other way. But anyway, that's the basic concept. I think if you want more, we'll get into more later. But the next question I wanted to cover was the question about stories. So Faye, you said that you tend to use layers, but you have trouble using stories. So let's go back to Vectorworks for stories. Now I think that you need to have a use for using stories, Faye. You don't always need to use stories, but you need to think of stories as being a collection of layers. So if I go in here and I start creating stories, and where's it gone? It's gone to the other screen, of course. Let's bring that in. So if we have a look, we've got this concept of stories. Now, if you've got stories already created, let's just add a few stories. We'll just duplicate a couple. If you've got layers already created, I should say, we can create stories and add those layers to stories. But it's a lot easier to start from the beginning and add those things from the beginning. So, for example, if you're going to use stories, it's better to start right from the beginning with stories. I'm just going to delete all of these. It's better to start with this without anything on your design layer and start by creating stories. So first of all, Faye, what are stories used for? You need to think of stories as being a collection of design layers and a collection of controls is probably the easiest way. So when I create a new story, I can call it story 1. Now Vectorworks does like calling it story-1. I've tried calling it level dash or level or floor, but Vectorworks quite likes calling it story. So in the end, I just stopped arguing with it and just let it do it. We've got here a collection of levels. So levels in Vectorworks can either be a layer or a three-dimensional height control. Now, I don't use stories very often because a lot of my work is single story, single, only one floor of the building, or at the most it's 2, and I don't use levels to control a lot of things. But let's say, for example, I wanted to create stories and I wanted to use stories to help control things like my door and window heads, which is quite a cool way of doing it. So I need a new level to control that. And it's probably easier if I looked up levels and I showed you some examples of sketches that I've created, because that might help to understand why we're using levels and why we're using stories. Now, I didn't know this question was coming up, so I apologize. I'm going to have to go to my website and do a quick search and search for stories. Let's see. Stories, layers and stories. Let's have a look at this one. So I'm looking for a few sketches, Faye, that might help explain how we use them. No, this is all movie based. Oh, this is the movie. This is the sketch I was actually looking for, Faye. I don't know if you can see this. Can I make it bigger, maybe? How's that? Can you see that all right, Barbara? I've gone full screen. Hopefully you can see that.
Yeah, looks good.
So, Faye, the idea is that the story is a collection of layers. You can see here that we've got foundations and we've got floor, and we've got another story above, which is the floor and the roof. So the first part of a story is this collection or this grouping together of design layers that make up a floor of the building. So you might have ceiling on a design layer, you might have furniture on a design layer, although I don't recommend it. But particularly in this case, where we've got foundations and the walls, two different design layers. The next part of stories is this ability to have levels to control things. So these lines here represent levels that I've created to control parts of my building. So for example, you could put a level to control the height of your baseboard or your skirting. And if we chose a level for that, and we said, okay, all my skirtings are at this level, you can then say, wait a minute, what does it look like if I make it 6 inches? And you can change this level here, and it'll change all of your skirtings or your baseboards. You can also create levels for things like ceilings. You can say, let's put my ceiling on the ceiling level. What happens if I change the ceiling level? What does my space look like? You can also use levels to control heights of things like symbols and doors and windows. So you can actually say to like for an example for me would be a light switch. If you're doing an accessible home, then you might want your light switches slightly lower. If you're doing a home for able-bodied people, your light switches might be slightly higher. You can actually create a light switch symbol and say, fit this to my light switch layer, so my light switch level, and then you can say, in this building, my light switch level is 3 feet, and all the light switches will be at 3 feet. And you can go, well, actually, my clients are quite tall. Let's make them 3 foot 6 inches, and they'll all change. So it's quite useful if you want to get into this strategy of using them. I like to keep things really simple, Faye. So for me, the strategy is, do I want the complexity of doing this or do I not? Do I want to keep it really simple? My projects vary dramatically. Sometimes I've got a project which is a tiny house which is only 100 square feet. It's nothing more than a shed. Sometimes it's a commercial building. Sometimes it's a 2-story residential place. And I never know at the start, before we start the project, I never know what it's going to be like. So I don't use templates. I don't have all the setup in a template. But if you do template work, if you do work with templates, these can be extremely useful. So you can use stories and you can use levels really easily to control elevations of things. So the first thing is you need to grasp this idea that a story is a grouping of layers. And then the second part is that the levels have a huge impact on the way you structure your Vectorworks file. So let's go back to Vectorworks and we'll have a look at that. Now, I just don't know what some of these levels mean. Sometimes when I create them, I think this is a Vectorworks. Some of these are Vectorworks ones. So I'll start with a brand new blank file and we'll see what Vectorworks have got for us. So file, new, I need a blank file. So this is a brand new blank file from Vectorworks. If I go here and I go, let's create some stories, let's create a new story. These are the typical Vectorworks stories that it creates. There's one called ceiling, top of parapet. I'm sure these used to have different names. They used to have something like ledge. I actually don't understand what a ledge is, so I don't know if I want a ledge. In fact, I don't even like the word ledge. So I'm going to edit my defaults. Now, if you don't edit your default story levels, you don't get the ability to apply them to every different layer. So ceiling is pretty straightforward. Top of parapet, that might be quite useful. But what do we mean by top of parapet? Parapet's normally a wall at the high level. I don't use those, so I'm going to remove that. I don't like the word ledge. I never know what it means. Does it mean the bottom of the slab? Is it the bottom of my brickwork? What is it? It could be anything, so I'll get rid of that. So I've got a ceiling, I've got a top of footing, I've got a finished floor, I've got a top of slab, bottom of slab, I don't like that one either, so I'll get rid of that one. So the sort of things typically that I would use for my default story levels would be, let's start from the ground and we'll work our way up. So let's go new layer, new level type, and this is bottom of footing. Better spell it right. Is that better? Eventually got there. So bottom of footing. So what's the elevation of this? Well, it might be working in millimeters. So let's make it -3 feet, -900 millimeters. Do we want it to create a layer? No, we're just using this to control the elevation of something. Let's create a new one. This one's going to be called top of footing. So it's a new, oh, there's one there already, top of footing. The elevation is -600, so -2 feet. So I'm actually going to end up, I can create a wall that goes between the bottom of my footing and the top of my footing, and it'll be exactly 300 millimeters or exactly 12 inches. What else do we want? I talked about things like top of a window. So let's create a new level head, and we'll call it window head, the head of the window. Elevation, I like mine at 7 feet, 2100 millimeters. And let's create another new one. What did I say? Light switch, didn't I? So light switch. Hold on, someone's just tried to call me. Okay, light switch. Okay. Elevation. What did I say? 3 feet. Let's make it 900 millimeters. Or if you want, you can actually type in 3 feet. Just use the foot mark. And I'm going to create a wall which has got 2 different parts to it. So I'm going to create a wall component. So this is my top of cladding. Top of cladding is going to be 4 feet, so 4 feet high. And I need a bottom of cladding because if we put brick, then we have to be at least 4 inches below the slab. So this is -4 inches. And it's a new level type called bottom of cladding. So it's a good idea to have all these part of your default drawing. Now, if you don't know what your default drawing is, once you've got all of the stuff created, you can then go and say, File, Save As Template. Don't forget to use Save As Template, and then you can save that into your templates folder. It works really well. So let's go back to this one, back to our stories. So story 1 has already got some of these slabs. Let's go and edit this story. So what do we want to see? Well, in this particular one, we need a footing. We need the bottom of cladding. We need the top of the footing. We've got one there. We need that one. We need a finished floor. Do we need a top of slab? Yes, maybe no. We need a light switch. We need a cladding. We need a window head. So down here, you just tick the levels that you need, and it'll create the elevation controls at this point. So let's OK that. And yes. Barbara, I see there's some questions. Let me just have a look at the questions. It's some people saying they missed the start. Hold on.
Yeah.
Right, so someone would like to review strategies for the wall tool. Maybe we can have a look at that. And someone's asking questions about site modeling in 2021. I'm sorry I can't talk about what's in 2021 until Vectorworks mention it. So, but if there's a change, Bob, we'll certainly be looking at it. So, Faye, I'm not sure whether I'm answering your questions the way you want. If I'm not, please send some more questions through, and let's make sure that we're getting the information that you want. So, we've got this ready to go. We can go to our floor layout here. For some reason, it's called layout. I'm going to create a wall now, Faye. I'm going to create a brand new wall. And of course, it's going to create that on my other screen. So here's my wall here. It's an unstyled wall, and I want this to be a foundation wall. So what do I want to happen with this? So my insertion options are to set the top of the wall, the top bound is the top of my wall, is the top of my footing. And the bottom of my wall is the bottom of my footing. And let's get rid of this number here. So if I create this wall, it should be fixing this wall between the top of my footing and the bottom of my footing. So let's just draw a quick wall and we'll try it. So that we'll just draw a simple building. There we are there. Let's look at it in 3D. and that should have fixed it between the top of the footing and the bottom of the footing. The height should be 300. Now I'm going to save this as a foundation wall. So let's save this. Let's go save, and we'll call it foundation. So that's a foundation wall. Now I want to create a new one. I'm going to create a more complex wall. This one's going to have components in it. So this is going to be my lining. I always start on the outside, so it's my cladding. Cladding. Its function is outer finish. Its class, and I should really have classes for all this. I'm not going to go through that at the moment. But I tend to use a class for the cladding and for the air gap and for the framing. And I've got all those things stored in a class. I use a class and layer. I just got to go and find it. It's hiding in my Dropbox. So you guys can't see it because it's on my other screen, but I can see it. Vectorworks Architect. Cool. So I've got a standards file which has got all the classes that I like to use. So I can go hit the letter W, and you can see all my wall types. So I can import all of these components. And this is going to be wall component cladding. The thickness is 90 millimeters. I'm not going to worry about the lambda. The lambda relates to Energos, or the energy calculation side of things. I'm not going to worry about that. So my component top is relative to a story, which is top of cladding. Where's top of cladding? There. And the bottom is relative to a story called bottom of cladding. So this is now going to control where my wall stops and starts based on the levels that I put in. And we'll make all attributes by class. Now I've got an air gap, so I'm going to create a new thing, which is in my air gap, which is a cavity. Its function is air gap, and its class is wall component cavity. Its thickness is about 50 millimeters, about 2 inches, and it's relative to the wall. This time, because my air gap's going to stop at my top of cladding, I'm going to stop it. Now let's leave it relative to the wall, and then we'll play with this. Let's go OK on that. Next thing, I need some framing. So I'm going to put timber framing in here. Its function is load bearing. It's going to be wall component, and I'm going to do frame. And its thickness 6 inches or 140 millimeters. I think that's enough at the moment. So now what I'm going to do is I better save that too. So let's save this preference, and we'll call it brick wall. Cool. Now I'm going to use what I've already drawn as the start of my wall. So if we look here, we've got the ability to do wall control line, which is using the overall size of the wall. This is my control line on the left. If I choose my core component, let's go back to my brick wall here. I didn't nominate which is my core, so I'm going to nominate framing as my core. I'm going to save this again as brick wall and replace the old one. So now I've notified, or I've indicated that one of these is the core of the wall. And now I can use this option here, the wall core, and I can use that outside point there to that outside point there. And you'll notice this time that my wall is sitting here, and there's a gap between the two of them. And there's a gap between them because I really need a foundation wall that goes between the two, and all I've really got is my footing. So if we go back to my wall styles, we're in this one here. Let's look at my foundation wall. Let's edit this one. And what we'll do with this particular one is we'll edit this wall style, and we'll tell it that the wall style needs to go between, the top bound needs to be the layer elevation, and they should all have changed. Did I save that? Let's go back and edit that again. Foundation, layer elevation. Okay, and these ones, I've got too many selected. Let's select that one. These ones need to be selected, all of them again. If I join, maybe I've joined them all together. Let's delete those ones. I'll just select those ones there. As I thought, unstyled. So let's replace this with my styled wall, with my foundation. And now that should have changed to the layer elevation. So it should have brought my foundations up. And then my other wall should be sitting on top of those. Now I'm worried that, oh yeah, cool, that's not. Now let's go back to my other wall. This wall here. Let's look at my wall preferences. Let's look at my insertion options. Aha, okay. So the top bound of this wall should be the layer wall height. The bottom bound should have been the layer elevation. That messed me up a little bit. And we'll save it as a brick wall again. So this time when I draw the walls, I should be able to draw those walls like that, and I should have the two coming together beautifully. And you can see here I've got this wall here, which is my brickwork. So what happens if we then go to the stories and start changing those story heights? Let's edit our stories. So let's go to the top of the cladding here. Remember, this is the top of my brickwork. And if we edit this level and make it 12 inches or 300 millimeters, it should affect all of those walls that go around the outside. So that's a description of how you can use the stories. So Faye, back to your original question. My curiosity is, do you want to use that complexity, or are you happy to do it a different way? Because there's more than one way to do this. And if you want to use these levels, they can be very powerful. When you create symbols, you can connect a symbol to that object. If I've got a light, I might have a light switch I can use. Electrical, switch elevation, switch, I think this one will do. When I place the switch, it's a 3D, I think it's a 3D switch, my ones. No, I have created some that are three-dimensional. Not the elevation one. I've created some light switches which are three-dimensional. I think this one here, socket 2. And when you create that switch, you can see it's got an actual socket to it, and I can set a height to that. But you can also, when you create the symbol, you can also link it to a particular level. So if we go back to this file here, it's called socket 2. Let's edit my symbol options. So here I can actually assign it, I can make it story aware. And did we call one light switch? I think we did, light switch. So we can say, okay, it should be on the edge of my wall, and it should align up with my light switch elevation, and then that thing should jump up to my light switch elevation. So if I've changed the light switch elevation, it should work. Stories, light switch 914. So that it should have made that thing jump up to the light switch, which I think it's done. Has that light switch? Z offset 0, and you can see there, and now it's sitting on my light switch elevation. And if I change the elevation of that layer, that light switch will go up and down. So there are some things that are really quite important. So Faye, so some of these things, Faye, you said you now that you understand stories a little bit more, you're quite happy sticking with layers. Just when you're sticking with layers, that's fine. I often just use layers. Remember to control the 3D height of the things, so you can create the things that you need. How are we getting on for time? Okay, so Faye said she's happy. So let's talk about roofs. I've got a roof I think I wanted to play with. So one of the things I wanted to make, someone was asking me about creating a skylight to put in here. So I'm going to use a window to create a skylight. Here's my window here. The beauty of using a window to create a skylight is that it's really easy to create a simple window. You can put mullions in it, you can put breaks in it, you can do all kinds of cool stuff, and it does create some of the structure for you. I'm going to go to my settings and make it a little bit more the size that I need. Let's just have a look at my window settings. So for my window settings, I need the jamb to be about 50 millimeters, but I need this to be 6 inches, 150 millimeters. Now, if we leave that window as it is and we stick it in and we try to use it as a skylight, you have to make it into a symbol. But if you make it into a symbol without ungrouping it first, then it doesn't work. So there's something really crucial about where we place the insertion point of our symbol. So I'm going to make this so it's easy mathematics for me. So I'm going to make it the structural opening. I'm going to make it exactly 3 feet, 900 and 1800. So the mathematics is easy. So the easy way to create this into pure 3D only, because it can't have any 2D parts, is to go modify, convert, and convert to group. When you convert it to a group, you lose the 2D part of that window. So I'm going to use this as a skylight. Next thing I'm going to do is make this into a skylight. So create symbol. This is my skylight. Next mouse click. Don't insert on walls. I can choose a class for this. So I can create a new class and call it roof-skylight, but I might have one already to go. Let's go letter R. Roof, components, roof main, roof light above. I could use one of these ones, roof light. So it's really handy if you've got a list of classes that you use on a regular basis, save it. Those of you that subscribe to my website will find it under the library options. You'll find that I give you my classes. Makes it so much quicker. So I'm going to click here and OK. So the insertion point of the symbol, it's now a symbol. Let's have a look at it. What did I do wrong? I'll tell you what I did wrong. Let's go back. It's a window. I converted it to a group in a 2D plan view, and all I ended up with was a 2D version. What I need to do is change to a 3D view, do the same thing, convert to group, and I'll end up with just the 3D portion. So now I'm going to go back to a plan view. I want to make that into a symbol again, create symbol. It's my skylight, so I'll call it skylight 900 by 1800. So I know what size it is. Next mouse click, let's put on a class, we'll call it roof. Let's create a new class, roof light. There, okay. Cool, so there's my symbol, it's in 3D. Let's find it and we'll have a little fun with it. This one here, skylight, let's edit the 3D component. So if we have a look at this and we look at this in a front view, there's the insertion point of my skylight there. There's my skylight sitting above it. When I place that onto a roof, it's not going to sit where I want it to. Now, in order to place, I find the easiest way to place a skylight on a roof is to drag it from the resource manager, have your roof and plan view, the roof highlights, you let go, and it places that, first of all, it places it as a dormer window. Click there, that little dot, there's a little dot, just a little blue dot, just at the bottom here, that's the one to click on, and I'm going to say edit skylight. It's now a skylight object, and you'll notice that my skylight doesn't line up with my hole anymore. The reason it doesn't line up with my hole is because of my 3D view of my window. Let's have a look at this in 3D. So this should actually, it should be the center of my window, of my skylight, should be at this 0, 0 point. You can see there's a green line comes down, there's a red line comes across. That should be the center of my skylight. If you don't make that the center, let's look at this in the top view. It's that face there. So it's got to be that edge of the roof. This point here, this edge of the roof here, sorry, this point here is going to be the edge of my roof. So if I want my skylight to sit on top of the roof, then I need to put the insertion point on that face of my symbol. If I put my symbol this way round, my symbol, my skylight will be sitting inside my roof, and this is the face of my roof. This is the inside of my building, and it's going to sit inside the roof. I don't want that. Let's exit my symbol. Let's render the view. Yes. And now you can see quite clearly my skylight is sitting on top of my roof. So it starts at my roof face and comes up. Where I live, I need a 6-inch upstand for my skylight. So why not build it as part of your symbol and you automatically get it for you. Since this is a skylight, I've got some settings here. Eaves cut on my roof. Let's go here. Hole cut is square. And you can see now that my skylight's cutting square through my roof. If I go back to that blue dot there, I can make them splayed. Sometimes the splayed works for me, sometimes it doesn't. In this case, it's not too bad. It's splaying that way and that way. Let's make it square again. So that's my square skylight. And if you follow the strategy, they work really well. But you have to be careful and you have to work methodically. And if you try to break the rules, so I was helping someone yesterday and he wanted to use just a window object. He didn't ungroup it or convert it to a group first, and it just showed as a blank hole. And once he converted it to a group, he didn't have the insertion point lined up, so his skylight didn't arrive in the right place. There's a couple of other questions. How do we apply fascias to the roof rake? There's a couple of different ways. So, Brandon, your question is, while you're on roof items, could you briefly cover best ways to apply a fascia to the roof rake? We're talking about this bit here, which we call the barge where I live. So you can create a barge board. Now, there's a couple of different ways to create a barge. One of them is to use a framing member. Where's my framing member? There it is. First of all, let's have a look at this. What angle is my roof? I'll just click on this bit here. 30 degrees. That's easy enough. So I can use a framing member. I can draw my framing member from there to there. What sort is it? It's a rafter. How thick is it? It's 18. Let's make it 300. It's a rafter. Its pitch is 30 degrees. Let's look at it from the back. Now, for some reason, it's not showing that roof. How weird. Isn't that strange? I'll get rid of my skylight. Okay, there it is. So, Brandon, does that help? Is that a quick way to make a barge board? So you can just make it like that. Let's just zoom in. Now, I find this difficult. Vectorworks likes to do things solid. I like width. And then I can drag that width to sit there. And there it is there. So that's an easy way to do it, I think. And once you've done one side of it, don't forget to use the mirror tool, and then you can mirror that both sides. I'm just using my keyboard shortcuts to jump between my different views. So, Brendan, does that answer your question? Way easier than extrusion? Yeah, It's missing a flashing though, isn't it? If only we could make a flashing for that. So I'm going to duplicate this. Now, before I duplicate, I've just got to check my preferences. They keep being adjusted by Vectorworks for some reason. Okay, allow, option, and click. Cool. So I'm going to make a copy of that. Only this time, instead of it being a raft, I'm going to give it a custom profile. Now, one of my custom profiles, I forget where I've left it now. Foundations, no, steel, timber, detailed parts. I thought oh, here we are, framing member custom flashings. It doesn't look like a barge flashing to me. We'll import it anyway. Let's import that. So if I go back to my framing member here, can I change the custom profile and make it a barge flashing? There it is. It's not quite what I wanted, so I'm going to adjust that profile, because what I really wanted it to be, I don't know why I've ended up with two identical ones. It should have been two different ones. Let's edit this 2D component. This is what it looks like in reality. This little dot here is the insertion point for that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this information, and I'm using the Reshape tool. So using the Reshape tool, I can stretch. So if I go to the Reshape tool, select my object, drag a marquee around those two corners, I can lift those two corners up together and make sure they line up with that edge there. I'm going to then grab these two corners and move those over to here. And you can see it's starting to get a little bit distorted. I'm going to highlight these corners and hit the delete key. So I've actually deleted part of it. Exit my symbol. I just need to change the elevation of this. I'm going to do a move in 3D. I'm just going to move it up 1/2 inch. And now I've got a flashing, which I think is kind of cool. In plan view, you can then move that across. So from here, you can move it down. It's going to work better if you do it in a top view, particularly if you do a top view, which is orthogonal and wireframe probably. Wireframe. Because what I need to do is I need to move that edge to there, and that should be perfect. There we are. And the top edge of my, so this top edge here, if you need to, you can play with the type that it is. I think there's a beginning miter, beginning bevel. I think it's 30 degrees, is it? -30. So I've got a -30 bevel on the top, and I should have a 30-degree bevel on the bottom. There it is there. And so you can see I've created my 3D part. So what do you think, Brandon? Is that another trick you can do? If you use the framing member tool, then you can actually put on the flashing as well, which is not a bad trick. Are we getting off time, Barbara? Are we getting through these? Richard's got a question.
We're doing good, Jonathan.
Yeah, Richard, I'm not sure I can do your roof trick. Richard's got a question about the roof. When deleting a roof composed of components, I'd like to delete the roof structure, leaving the sheathing and the shingles so I can make the rafter tails. One of the big problems I've got with that, Richard, is that the roof is always, the setting out of the roof, the height of the roof, is always measured to the underside. So when you delete the sheathing, when you want to leave the sheathing but delete the roof structure, it becomes quite tricky because the roof then drops down by the amount of the structure. As a second idea, Richard, what about putting your roof components on a class and then just turning that class off? So you don't change the height of the roof, you're just turning off the class of that roof component. Let's go components. So we can create, what do you call it, sheathing? I'll call it covering. Covering. How thick's the covering? Mine's about 1 inch thick. We'll just move that one down. What's the next one we've got? We've got another new one, which is my purlins. My purlins are about 45 millimeters, about 2 inches. And then I've got my structure. So what if we start adding classes to this? Let's find roof. Have we got roof classes we can use? I've lost roof component. Here we are. So we've got purlins. Let's do all of that. Let's import those. So that's, cool, that's rafters. Yep, that's what I want. This one here, let's edit this one. We'll call this one object class, which is roof component purlins. And this one will be roof component cladding. So I've got these components now, Richard. Do you want to turn off the structure? What if we go to roof, rafters, and we turn off the rafters? And I'm thinking maybe this one, Richard, is an easier one to do because that way you can get rid of some of the bits. I want the component over the heated space, not just beyond the wall. You could change those components and tell them here, you can tell this component to bound to the inner face of the wall core. I haven't got a wall core, so it's not going to change it, but you could do it that way. Someone's asked, what's my workflow? What does that mean? For created reflected ceiling plans. I don't have much time to answer that one. My roof flow, do I have any? I don't tend to create a reflected ceiling plan. I tend to create a floor plan that shows the electrical work. But if I was going to create, I have in the past created reflected ceiling plans, and I tend to use layers and classes to create my reflected ceiling plans. I haven't got anything I can show you, I'm afraid. But if we use classes to control things like electrical work, then it becomes, maybe I've got one I can use. Let's go to a floor plan. Okay, here we are. So this has got everything turned on. So how would I create a reflected ceiling plan? I get rid of the things that I don't want, so I'm going to use the visibility tool. So I don't want to see my floor framing. I don't want to see that. I don't want to see these dimensions at the moment. But I want to see my electrical. And what I would start to then do, these are my structural columns, let's get rid of those. But I'd also create a, it may not surprise you, but I use a lot of classes to control information. So if we go to my electrical drawing, you can see that in my electrical drawing, I've got my walls are just as solid as anything else. But because I'm using classes to control information, I could easily change that, and I could say that wall, now I've got some here called wall component frame. So let's look at wall component frame. We'll edit this one, and we'll change the graphic style of this so that it's not as dominant. So it's going to be a solid, it's going to be a white line. I'm going to change the line thickness and make it thin. And let's see if that has a difference. So you can see that's made quite a difference doing it that way. The other thing you might want to do for a reflected ceiling plan might be to actually turn off some of these components that I've got here. So I want to turn off my baseboard, my cavity, my cladding, my frame, and my lining. Let's have a look at that. Now I've got another one called wall proposed. That's this one here, I think. Let's edit that one. That one's solid, that's fine. This is the one, wall proposed too. So I can make it solid. I could give it a light gray fill. Let's preview that. I thought I turned off framing. I was trying to get rid of that framing through there. But the framing, you can see that my walls have shown up again around there, which is not what I wanted. I thought I had a class for the covering. Yeah, wall covering's turned off. Unless it's on a different class I haven't thought of yet. Oh. Maybe it's on one of these ones. Might be wall external. Oh, it's wall external. Okay, let's edit that one again. We'll make it solid. We'll make it a light gray color. And we'll make it thin. So that way I can see my walls, but I can see them differently. Now, the other thing, of course, is that if it was a reflected ceiling plan, I really want to fill in my windows. So it'd be nice if I had something with my window that I could use to fill it in. If I got lintels, door lintel, this one here. Let's preview. Quite often I use a class like this one here, the door lintel, for these dashed lines through here. And I could also change that one again to match exactly the same as the other one. So without changing my design, without changing, drawing extra information, I can use classes to control my reflected ceiling plan. I think I've done Brandon's thing. I've done Richard's thing. So, Mr. Stiles, does that help my workflow for reflected ceiling plans? In a window with a transom, the transom takes on different settings. The mullions are smaller, the glazing class is different, and the stop differs. Let me go back to that. I don't use transoms very often, so I need to go back and have a look at my window. I might need to add a transom to my window. That's my window there. Oh, it's a window. Okay. I haven't got window installed on this particular computer, so I need to just place a window in. Somebody asked me online this morning how I do my extra bifold windows with 3 on one side, 1 on the other. I use window. Let's make it 1200. Let's make it 1800. So one of the challenges I've got is that I'm used to using a different window system. I like using the other one from where I live. We get window. So I think in order to do what you want to do, don't I have to do a, who am I talking to? David. So David, I think in order to do what you want to do, don't I need to make this a custom profile with 2 rows like that? So I've got different sashes, top and bottom. And then you want to control that. So sash width. So the fan light should be, so the transom bar should be this one here. I should be able to edit this transom bar separately from other parts. Hopefully that's done it. But to me, it doesn't look like it has done it. But that's where I'd start looking. As I said, I don't use the standard Vectorworks one very often. We call it a transom, you call it a fan light. Window shape, top shape, square, round. I think the transom bar might be this one here. Okay, let's have a look. That might be where I've done it. Oh, there it is. So I've used the, so David, if you want to change the size, you need to use that top. Where'd it go? Here you need to have a top shape of square, tick the fan light, and then put the fan light at the top of the transom, I think is, in America, I think that's called a transom. So you can tick it there. How are we getting off time bar? We're getting close to the end, aren't we?
Yeah, we have a few more minutes.
Yeah, we're running out of time. How to link detail symbol to detail on a sheet layer. Oh, that's probably an important one. I got any? Let's have a look. I'll have a look, see if I've got any. Foundation plan. Okay, so let's put in a detail. This will probably be the last thing I can do is to put in the detail. I need dims and notes. I need section elevation reference, I think, that one there. I'm going to use it in this method. You've got to use it in this method, I'm afraid. Detail call out, I don't want that one. Section reference. So I want to put a detail through here. I then click over here. I need to link it to a viewport. I need to know what that viewport name is, which would be really handy if I knew what it was. So let's go to my details, foundation details. Now I think I've cheated here and I've got all of these details are on one thing, and it's a PDF page. So I haven't even got a viewport that I can connect to. That's a terrible example then, isn't it? If I had a viewport here, I could link to a viewport. What can we do with that? Let's cut that. Go to details 1 to 5. We'll paste that there. And I'll make a viewport from it. So that's going to be a viewport. You there, Barbara?
Yep.
My computer's going slow. I hope it didn't froze. Last week, yeah, because I've used a different computer since I had that freezing issue. Okay, let's make a viewport. So we're going to go view, create viewport. Yes, we want to do that. We're going to put it on our foundation details. This is going to be number 1. It's going to be my pile detail. It's a good idea to name these. If you don't, it can be a little bit troublesome. Foundation detail 1. Okay. So now I should have a viewport on my, good, I got one there. It's all at the wrong scale, I'm sorry, because I didn't set this up properly. So there it is there. So I've got a viewport. I then go back to my drawing, this one here, the foundation plan. And what I should be able to do is I should be able to select this label here, click here and say foundation detail. And now it's connected. No text at both ends, set marker styles. I've got one I created called null somewhere because I don't like some of the lines that it gives me. This line, I don't like that. So I actually created another one. I can't remember. Oh, it's on another computer. I created one that I didn't, a different one, because I don't like some of these ones where they got like a heavy section line. anyway, that's how you connect them together, which is kind of cool because you can connect these together. Let's undo that, and we'll choose the marker style, which is that one, I think. And I want to differentiate the end one, but I don't like having these heavy lines on mine. I like just having a simple line, but there are very few that are nice for these ones. So I created one which was just a dot at the end of it, and it works really well. So Barbara, I think that's probably it. We're running out of time.
For today. But
so just more. Before we go, just let me do a quick advert.
Okay.
Don't forget to go to my knowledge base. If you want something, go to my knowledge base and you can look it up. You've got to be a subscriber. Some of you guys are already subscribers. I think that it's, I've called it the Visual Knowledge Base because everything's movie based. So if we want to look up annotation tools. So here's all my annotation tools. Have a look for those. But yeah, if you guys want to join, thanks very much. If you don't forget to come along next month. We'll do Architect again. Thanks, Barbara.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, Jonathan. Great. We love roofs. We love your availability. And let me tell everybody where they should go to get their Vectorworks. Come to novage.com. We have a limited time promotion. If you get a new license, or if you update your license now, you can get 2021 for free, plus a free VSS, and you save 25%, of course. Novage is changing the way designers purchase 3D software, offering more choices, more freedom, best advice, and faster service. Thanks again for joining us today. It's been wonderful hanging out with you guys. Hope you got a lot out of this session. And remember, this session happened bi-weekly, so join us again in a couple of weeks. Have a great rest of the day, everybody. Bye-bye, Jonathan, and bye-bye, all of you.
Thanks for having me, Barbara.
Bye.